Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dey podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Niinemets, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Balds Don't Lie. Paul Dana Jr. here with you, and we had to do it. There were too many people clamoring and wanting to know, and honestly, I've just felt a little lost without him. We had to bring in the man whose name is in the song. Okay, our guy, stepdad, Dave Niinemets. What's up, buddy?
I mean, we got to keep the song legit. And I did see comments along the way where people said, maybe you need to change that song. But now this buys you months and I can go back into hiding. I was hoping people would start conspiracy theories about what might have happened to me, like a Paul is dead Beatles type thing, or a what happened to Tuah girl after her meme coin. But turns out people don't really care about me.
Yes, they do.
I'm not at the
first of
Paul
all,
McCartney or Tuah girl level.
I love it. I love the idea that you would have gone Tuah girl and have your own podcast that became a really controversial thing. I'm here for that.
I'm probably going to start my own meme coin, but just stay tuned for that.
So I'll let you know. Dude.
Yeah,
I look forward to it. Look, there's been a lot of, I had to go search the Growler podcast at gmail.com and see how many people have asked about you over the last month. Where is Dave? Is he okay? I have many emails here from people, and it's all, where's Dave? Is Dave not here? Where occasionally Dave is there. They don't know how to even address all of us as a group because they don't know if they should even still be addressing you anymore because you might be dead or something.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's good to have you back with us. So the people have asked, I've had many people they want you back because they want you to be part of the show and they enjoy you. And I do too. And that's why I'm happy that you're here today.
I am very enjoyable. I think it's just the energy I bring to this show, the excitement. I get it. I get it.
That's the headline, the title of today's show. I am very enjoyable. That's what it's going to be. Dave, we do have some Bengals news when we get to. Mo is going to join us here in a little bit. I guess we're going to go down the Tee Higgins path again. I kind of want to reset the timelines on that. I think we're now, thank God, starting to get a little closer to things actually happening in that regard. And we're seeing comments coming out now. Diana Rossini talking about how T wants to have a sense of what's going to happen pretty soon here, and no, not all that stuff. So it'd be a good time with Mo to touch on the timeline and some of the conversations surrounding him, since he is kind of the first domino that's going to fall here in this regard. So we'll get to that in a little bit. The hard part is, so much of all the stuff that you want to talk about, whether we're talking about free agencies or the draft or, big boards. Yeah, look out, people. Big board season is here. Big board coming out tomorrow, Thursday. I kind of used Dave, you've read through it. I did a positional priority. I felt like it was a good chance to combine something that I do think is really interesting with something that's just kind of closing your eyes and throwing darts right now, because so many things that are happening in free agency and that will happen when the coaches get folded in to the process is going to change so much of this. Yeah. But you do have a general feel. I think it was good to combine positional priority with some of the draft, names that will mostly be in contention there at pick 17, and then some other names to keep an eye on for the second round. So, but all of that stuff inevitably ends up coming back to, but it depends on T, or it depends on Trey Hendrickson or Jamar. And so much of this, it's you can't really get anywhere in the corners of the conversation without starting with those big names.
Yeah, just think about how big receiver becomes a priority. Yeah. If he doesn't stick around, if he does stick around, it's a much lower priority. So it's like, it's hard to wrap your head around which way everything should go. I think, like last year, I think we were already saying get Byron Murphy and get a defensive tackle. Like we kind of knew last year, but it can go any number of ways right now, and just gonna have to wait and see on him. But we can always speculate over and over and over and over and never let it go.
Yes, of course. Well, meanwhile, there's lots of smaller items I think that are interesting to touch on as well. I hope people go back and listen to Charlie and I on the rewatch. Did Trey Hendrickson beyond the sacks? We kind of tried to take a deeper look at really Trey Hendrickson, who he was beyond what the highlights that you all know, in terms of run defender, when those sacks came. Talked a little bit about the future expectations when you talk about big extensions and things like that. Great show. Charlie, of course, came insanely prepared. Really enjoyed talking through that with him. It's a great show. I highly recommend it for all things Trey Hendrickson conversation to go back and listen to the rewatch. I think you're really going to like it. That said, we finished recording that on Monday, and the first thing I saw was Myles Garrett has officially requested a trade. And I thought, well, this is an interesting tie into the conversation that we just had, because Myles Garrett requesting a trade gets everybody out and saying, hey, go get Myles Garrett. Everybody should be interested. Everybody should be offering all of these things. And the similarities between Myles Garrett and Trey Hendrickson in some ways are fascinating, because Trey Hendrickson is, the old adage of like a poor man's Myles Garrett, I guess, or like a 75% of Myles Garrett. You're getting the sacks. You're getting a dude who's a scary edge rusher. All these things. He's not Myles Garrett. Myles moves around. He's more dynamic. His athletic freakishness kind of sets him apart, and you can maybe count on him to last longer in terms of older age, but they're of a similar age. They've had a lot of production that looks the same in terms of sacks in recent years. So it's like all the teams that come out and say, go get Myles Garrett, you wonder if they're the ones that don't, and they made a run at it, if they would then maybe make a call to Duke Tobin.
Yeah, it's not like if that's your consolation prize, you're getting Camus Myles Garrett. You're getting pretty close to Myles Garrett. Now, I mean, Myles Garrett obviously is generational as they come, but in today's game this past season, Trey Hendrickson is right there in that group of elites with TJ Watt and Micah Parsons and Garrett. So yeah, I would think if nothing else, it maybe stirs up those teams that have been pondering going after a big edge rusher and realizing that once Garrett's plucked off the pile, like, hey, who's the next guy? And one would hope that the Bengals, if that opportunity arises, takes advantage of it and, kind of uses that as their comp and say, we'll take a little less than that, but we still want something, in that neighborhood. I don't know that he gets that, but still, it should set a nice table for the Bengals if they want to go the trade route.
If they want to go that way, and that's are they taking those calls? I'm sure you're listening, but our team's even willing to call. It's certainly not for the same amount. Interesting note that I saw tweeted came from Spot Track, I believe. Had all the defenders traded for a first-round pick, and they all those players were between age 23 and 28, which was something that we've kind of discussed in the trade comp scenario, where I don't know that a 1 is realistic if you're talking about Hendrickson. I think it is for Myles Garrett because of who Myles Garrett is, but the idea of multiple 1s and all of that stuff, I don't know if that is going to happen for Myles. But this isn't a Browns podcast. This is a Bengals podcast. But I do want to, some of the teams, that came up, Zach Jackson has a story on where collected sort of offers from our athletic colleagues on trade proposals there. Atlanta, Buffalo. I mean, he's not going to Buffalo. The Bengals would never trade Trey Hendrickson to Buffalo. The Bears make a lot of sense. They have 2 second-round picks. They have Dennis Allen, Trey Hendrickson's former coach in New Orleans, now as defensive coordinator under Ben Johnson. That's an interesting comment. Hell, Press Taylor's there in Chicago now too, Zach Taylor's brother. And so that certainly is one that you could maybe see making sense. Teams teams with extra picks kind of view them as like, oh, this isn't even really ours. You can have it, you know? So keep that in mind. The Lions, of course, they've been sniffing around. I remember last year getting messages from our Lions writers. Is there a chance Trey Hendrickson would maybe? And the answer was no. But they're still looking as they try to put somebody opposite Aiden Hutchinson. The Packers, the Colts are an interesting thought with Lou Anarumo there now. Maybe there could be a connection made there with his old coordinator who would love to have Trey, of course. Chargers, Patriots, 49ers on that list as well. Washington Commanders make a ton of sense. They have money. They are looking to add to their pass rush and feel like it's the one thing that they're missing. And that was the one that Zach ended up going with in this deal. So just some teams to keep an eye on and think of when the teams that are interested in Myles Garrett might also be ones that would maybe be the ones to give a call to the Bengals if that was something the Bengals wanted to do.
And if a team's excited about it, I know Matt Schneidman did our Packers one on that, and he threw Lucas Van Ness in there. And you may say, well, Lucas Van Ness has been a bit of a bust as a first rounder. But what's to say that he is? You know, like if you make a deal, you can get a pick or two, and then you get a guy like that thrown in as well. You kind of create a possible replacement right there, much cheaper, and kind of solves a problem. But the possibilities are pretty good if you're just using that exercise to just see who maybe would come out and go after him. And the Lions one's an interesting one because you're right. That was all the buzz for a while, and they didn't move on from him. And then they got Zadarius Smith, which I think is more of a short-term solution. So that would be a team that I think would be definitely interested.
I mean, if you're about being an active, proactive front office and can be creative, there are ways to check multiple boxes with something like this. You know, basically think of it like the opposite of what the Mavs did with Luka, right? Where they just like somehow managed to take this insane asset and really check like one box. I mean, you should be able to check a lot of boxes with this type of a move if you were going to go that way. So just keep that in mind. Cooper Kupp is apparently going to be traded. He made that kind of announcement. That, you know what that screams to me, Dave? The Rams and Cooper Kupp getting together and say, hey, can you make a big dramatic announcement about this so everybody knows that we're trying to trade you so you don't have to cut you?
Yeah.
Because you're taking on that salary, an old receiver. That just really feels like he's going to eventually get cut, and they're just trying to recoup something for him.
That my first thought, and we were messaging about it yesterday, that we were trying to do the same thing we were with Myles Garrett, just kind of look at possible trade proposals. And it just, with that salary, I think if they're going to get a trade out of it, the Rams are going to have to eat a lot of that money. I mean, I think from a fan standpoint, it gets exciting because he's a name, but this isn't Cooper Kupp from 3-4 years ago. He's just hurt all the time. He's still a heck of a receiver. He still makes amazing catches, but he's just hurt all the time. So it's not Triple Crown Cooper Kupp, you know? So
no.
I think you're right.
And when you've been hurt, those injuries have a lot of wear and tear over time.
Yeah.
And look, receivers, people must think that I'm an ageist, which I shouldn't be. As a 44-year-old bald man, I mean, like the last thing I am is an ageist, but you see it, especially at the receiver position. Man, it's so, and when you're a separation guy at the receiver position, it's just so hard, and you have multiple injuries. He kind of just looks like a shell of himself in what he was as a previous player. And I kind of get the sense with the Bengals see it that same way. They're not going to be involved in that. So sorry to shut down the excitement for the Cooper Kupp people out there. Oh yeah, by the way, they're not trained for Myles Garrett either. For those people that were, I saw that. What could the Bengals? No. So those are kind of some of the big, it's the beginning of trade and trade speculation season as that all is going on. Those are kind of happening. I'm sure more of those will start to pop up. We're going to start to enter cut and trade season over the next few weeks where teams start making these moves. They start cutting the fat leading into free agency and things like that. So there'll be a lot more of this type of stuff that will pop up. Just know a lot of these teams are doing this because they don't feel like there's value in those players anymore. And there's a lot of names that show up this time of year, but not necessarily a lot of true answers for teams. But you never know. Trey Brown is going to interviews on a list to interview with the Jags. He was a finalist for the Jets, of course, personnel exec. He's kind of been one of the key players on Duke's staff here. So he'll be interviewing with the Jaguars. Potential that he could get that job. And that would be a tough spot for the Bengals at this point and where they're at. To lose a guy like that, they would gain a 3rd-round pick through the minority hiring to a GM is part of that, the pick addition. So you would add a 3rd-round pick in that, but I think they would pay for it on the other end in losing Trey Brown, who is a real asset and has been a real asset to them in recent years. So just an update on sort of where he's at. His name continually has come up in all of these jobs. Mostly, his background is fascinating, and people, the true hardcores here, they remember I had Trey Brown on the show last year, right before the draft, actually, and talked about his background in New England and Philly. He's worked with Belichick and Howie Roseman and some of the best, and was a big part of building the Super Bowl team here. Like, that's a heck of a background to have when you're looking for a GM. And so he's in that mix, and it would be a tough beat for them to lose him.
Has he gotten buzz in past seasons? Like, do you recall whether he was?
Yeah, he's gotten interviews before. Yeah, he has gotten interviews before. None of them have totally panned out. But this was, man, he was in on a ton of interviews this year. So we'll see if maybe this is really the last potential landing spot for Trey Brown. So that could happen. The Bengals signed Mitchell Tinsley, Dave.
Huge.
How about that?
Huge. Yeah.
Huge.
I'm expecting the jersey sales to be off the charts once they get into the pro shop.
I almost did the ultimate sin and almost called you by dad's name. I almost called stepdad by dad's name. I almost J'd you there. That causes a major fight in a household.
As it
should,
do that. Because I just wouldn't go to those concerts. I'm offended you'd think I'd go to those concerts.
Oh, come on. You would definitely go see Warrant at the Hamilton Fairgrounds.
I would do that.
Yes, you would.
I mean, cherry pie in Hamilton, you can't beat that.
You can't beat it. I mean, it's it's like watching Picasso paint. You know what I mean? Truly in their true environment. Shout out Jay, of course. Always.
Yeah. By the way, he should be the one more offended there that you were mistaking me for him, not vice versa. So yeah, I'll take it as a compliment. Jay should probably be somewhere very angry right now once he sees that.
He's such an angry person. You know what I mean? Like,
he is really angry guy.
Yeah.
Really short fuse.
Bobby Hart signed. Hart signed a futures deal with Washington. Shout out to Bobby Hart for still being in the league. And that's why he has stayed. Those of you that found it, the Easter egg on the mock-off season every year, available for $1 at OT3. Always there. Always there. Yeah. I love it. I love that Bobby, like, I feel like, Bobby Hart has got to be somewhere being like, look, you guys take your shots at me all you want to. I was pretty much the best right tackle that team had for like a 6-year period. Like it or not.
When they got Bobby, we were kind of excited about that, weren't we? We kind of thought we might have found like a little bit of a dude, or was it always just
no? I don't know that there was ever a dude.
It was not dude.
Hey, this could be serviceable.
He's a breathing body, is what he is.
But there's nothing I remember more than the outrage when we were at the combine, and Jim Turner, renowned offensive line coach, in his first interview with us, essentially like stood on the table for Bobby Hart, and I think Kat Terrell, our great friend from ESPN, who's now in New Orleans, tweeted it out first. And I've never seen mentions go straight to dumpster fire faster. It was incredible. And so fans were uninterested in Bobby Hart, and understandably so.
I'm realizing what I'm mistaking is Cordy Glenn. That's what I was thinking of. He was certainly no dude, but
no,
we had
different. That was the dumpster fire on the left side.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Hart was the dumpster fire on the right side.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. I mean,
good time.
look, although much bigger. Do you know that? So the Cordy Glenn, I always feel bad because Cordy Glenn would just disappear. Like you wouldn't see him in the locker room ever and never know like where he went, or because obviously we had lots of questions for him, but he didn't seem to really want to. I don't know if he didn't want to play or whatever was going on with him. But then all of a sudden, when like the media time would be over or whatever, and you'd be walking on the hallway and you'd see him come out of the bathroom that's across the tunnel hallway. So we call it like the Cordy Glenn Memorial bathroom because like it's like he would go in there to hide.
Yeah.
So I never like, is that just like, does he just hang out in there to be away during media time? Like you can use the training room like everybody else, or maybe he just didn't want to go. Maybe his teammates weren't. I don't know what was going on there, but I always think when I think of Cordy Glenn, I always think of, oh yeah, there's the Cordy Glenn Memorial bathroom. See, these are the stories you just wouldn't get if you were sitting at home by yourself right now, Dave, not talking to me.
That's true. It's a good point. I'm thinking a lot about Cordy Glenn in the bathroom now. I appreciate it.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
It's too late.
I apologize to everyone for that, actually.
Yeah.
I apologize to everyone for that.
So when Mo does his like doesn't he have like his hall of shame that he's worked on with plaques and such? Do you think Bobby Hart and or Cordy Glenn get in there?
Ooh, I feel like you could probably induct the entire offensive line from like the 2019 season.
Yeah.
You just have them all a plaque of all of them standing there, like John Jerry and Alex Redmond, and I guess I don't know. Some of them were on the Super Bowl team, so you can't. But there's a lot of players from that era that are in the Hall of Dishonor without question.
Dishonor. Yes.
The Super Bowl is Sunday. I don't know if you heard about that. The Hall of Fame, we're going to find that out over the weekend. NFL Honors is Thursday night, and so you'll get all of these announcements that the Hall of Fame thing. You'll get all these awards. Joe Burrow will probably win Comeback Player of the Year for a second time, so he'll get up on stage and accept his award. I'm sure he'll make some comment about needing to sign Tee Higgins while accepting his award, and everyone will have to react to it because it's like what happens constantly. So Willie Anderson is the name that's up. Willie has vaguely tweeted suggesting that it didn't happen. I think there was a lot of this could be the year for him. We'll get final word on that and learn the class on Thursday. But that would be tough and unfortunate because Willie has put in a lot of work. I mean, and I shouldn't say he's put in work, but a lot of work has been put in by everybody to bring his case to light. Like, it's ridiculous that he has been sort of overshadowed throughout this entire process as one of the the greatest right tackle of his generation and a true Hall of Fame worthy player. And it gets harder. You get more of these modern guys the longer it goes. You're supposed to be next in line, and he's been really close and gotten a little closer every year. If you miss out again at some point, you wonder if you end up being that one that was just always so close and never got over the top as other names overshadow it. First ballot guys start showing up, and it just gets really hard.
Yeah, I just don't know how you can have all those all pros and not have been a lock already. I mean, it's just being a Bengal and just not being a household name. But, we're going to listen to all the hot takes on Eli Manning, and God love him. He's a quarterback and has 2 Super Bowls. But if you look at the numbers, it shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. But you look at the accomplishments of what Willie had, and it should be, I think, a no-brainer. But you're right. Each year that goes by, he just starts to become another name on the list, and you get Luke Kuechly comes along, guys like that, and they jump out because that guy was great for a more recent period. So hopefully it gets in, but it's always pushing the boulder up the hill to get Bengals in the Hall of Fame, isn't it? It's like outside of Munoz, there's just never one that you don't have to spend lots of time making that case for him all the time.
People that have listened to this show over the years are going into the fetal tuck awaiting my rant. They've heard it. They know my feelings on it, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hold back. You go listen to any old episode that search Hall of Fame in our podcast feed, okay? And if you find it, you'll find some of the same rants that we've had, and in fact, that Mo and I have had for when he comes on here in a second, because it seems like we always end up going to that place, whether it be with Corey Dillon conversation, the fact that he hasn't even been in the conversation, or Willie, or any number of players. It seems like we always end up in that same place. And I'm not going to go there, just not going to go there today.
I like watching you like physically holding yourself back from going
it hurts.
There. It's killing you right now. Yeah,
it is. I want to go off on it's the committee, and they have the same people that vote every year. They have the same biases, Dave. It's insane. It's insane.
It's like a dam ready to burst right now. The water's just coming through the cracks. Yeah,
I know. It's just overflowing over the top. We need to end this right now before it somehow gets worse. Dave, I want to thank you personally for coming back, stepping. They're not stepdads. Step up. All right, the dad who stepped up. That's right. So remember that. Whoop. You're always that to me. You're always that to us. And thanks for buying me at least another month on the song. I want you back more. That's what I want.
You work on that. We'll see. I feel like I've filled my obligation now for at least 6 months. But the song has been refreshed. It'll take a while for people to not notice I'm not here for several episodes.
Well, I mean, a lot of people were concerned about your well-being, and so I'm just happy now that they can know that you are alive. We have video evidence proof. This wasn't like some AI generated thing. Like, it was really you.
They can get back to people like Charlie and Jay that know what they're talking about, and I think that's it. I kind of refreshed the palette for those guys. They're like, ooh, I was getting kind of tired of Jay or Charlie, but after Dave's been on there, I can't wait for them to get on and actually have something to say. Other than
but you know what you don't get with Jay and Charlie? Hawk Tuah jokes.
That's true.
You don't get that. Yeah. You don't get that at all, but you always deliver, and that's why I appreciate it. Dave, thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
All right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, shifting away from an old friend coming back to, the friend you talk to every week, and that is our guy, Mo Egger, ESPN1530, who is You're somewhere new today. You're somewhere new today. I always love when you hop in and I don't know where you are. Although it does, I gotta say, look safer than like a Frisch's parking lot right now.
No question about it. I mean, I'm actually in a podcast room. So yeah, I'm actually in a. I don't know how to turn on the light. I thought maybe I'd put some light on myself. There's a lamp here. I don't know how to. I don't know how to turn it on. So yeah, I took a golf lesson this morning from fan of the podcast, Will Grimmer from Ohio State, from Marymount. He's got a setup upstairs, and we had moved things around. So I'm like, you know what, I can do the golf lesson, and if he has because I badly need it, and if he has a space, I can do the growler. And so I reached out and said, like, hey, any shot that I could do the golf lesson and then record this at 10 o'clock. And he's like, yeah, we have podcast rooms in our building. So here we are.
I mean, tell Will I need a lesson as well. I'd love some help if he can do anything. I'm in the market for a new driver right now, and I need somebody who can tell me it's not the club's fault. Or make it less the club's fault, and maybe take advantage of spending money on a new driver. So
maybe one day you and I can come down here and we could take a lesson, hit some balls, and then we'll podcast in person.
Wow, in that space, and maybe by then we'll know how the lamp works. I love this. Well, thanks for squeezing it in. I appreciate it as always. And I like you're holding a little mic, which is fun to watch. You're like one of the TikTok kids now. I love that.
So I got this like lapel mic thing for like doing videos and stuff. And then I wore a shirt that doesn't have a collar. So I don't know that the lapel thing, and I don't know that it works. So like that ain't.
And
it.
No,
So
it doesn't sound. Yeah, I like it. I like you kind of holding it with your couple of fingers there. It's nice. It's very dainty.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to talk about, I do have real questions for you beyond this. I wanted to talk a little bit about I don't want to talk about Tee Higgins again, I should say. But there's something that I just kind of want to run through. I've gotten this question a lot, and it's kind of about the timeline of things. And because we had, Diana Rossini was talking on The Scoop, the Athletic podcast. I hope you're listening to that, as well as the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays, but she was talking about Tee Higgins saying he wants to have an answer very soon on where things are going, doesn't want to see it roll over into free agency. I wanted to kind of set the timeline on it. And, February 18th is when that franchise tag window opens. Last year, he kind of almost famously at this point was tagged immediately at the beginning of that, with the Bengals leaving no doubt what their plans were. But that goes until March 4th at 4 p.m. was probably the most important date on the current calendar. That's when it's going to be pretty much decision time and deadline spurring action time on the Bengals deciding, are they going to be able to get a long-term deal done with T, or are they going to put a tag on him as a potential tag and trade situation to ensure that they would get something back from him. So I want to remind people of that deadline, but that conversation has kind of sparked a little bit more in the Tee Higgins one, and about, he wants to see how much he's worth. Okay. He wants to see how much he's worth on the market, as he should. And he's worth a lot. And there are a ton of teams that are needing receivers and that are looking for the best receiver on the market. And that player's name is Tee Higgins. He might be the best overall player on the market. He might be the highest paid individual free agent in this period. And that means that the number goes higher than you even thought. My question to you is this, Mo, and I'm sure you've talked about it before. If you're Tee Higgins, first of all, congratulations. You probably take many more golf lessons. And you might get a real lamp and like a stronger mic next time. No, but that said, you're Tee Higgins. Would you take less money to play with Joe Burrow?
I would.
Yeah,
I would because I can still achieve generational wealth and have. I said this to you after the Denver game. I can't think of many players who are as beloved in the history of this franchise, Paul, than Tee Higgins. Legitimately beloved. He'll always be beloved and should be. But there's guy who's beloved because he was here for 5 years and went to a Super Bowl. And then there's franchise icon who, if we assume that T is going to continue to do everything right and have this relationship with fans that has just been awesome to watch blossom, I think the reason why T still wants to be here is because he thinks he can win here. As much as we can really be down on the Bengals, and as important as this offseason is, and as much as we can criticize them for a lot of things that have not gone well, like I think Tee Higgins goes, okay, I've won here. I haven't won the Super Bowl here, but like we've had success. We've had 4 straight winning seasons. We've been to consecutive conference championship games. We're not that far away. I can win here. Now this is just me. If T prioritizes the most amount of money, dude, go for it. You've earned this. So, but if it's me, I go, okay, I can continue to catch passes from Joe Burrow. I can continue to play with Jamar Chase. I know it works here. The relationship I have with fans is awesome. If we win here, and a reason why we won here is I've stayed, number one, I'll have the currency of winning, which matters to these guys. They're all going to make money, right? All the superstars make money. Who wins, right? Who has rings? So I can win here, and I can go down as an all-time great in the city of Cincinnati. You can't put a price on that. And so that would matter to me enough to take less. Now, what is less, right? Is it $7 million per year less? How much money am I sacrificing here? But that that would matter to me, to have the ability. Look, I can go to another team and I can maybe win, and I can be celebrated and I can be popular and I can enjoy the benefits of winning and the benefits of popularity in another city. But I think it would be different than homegrown guy stays here, wins here, and is a part of the greatest chapter in franchise history for a guy who is already, has a public approval rating that might be higher than any athlete in town who's not Joe Burrow and not Jamar Chase, and that's rarefied air. I would look at this as an opportunity where I can stay in Cincinnati. I can catch passes from Joe. I can win here. And if I do, I'm going to be in that really rare group of athletes in this town that goes down as legendary. I would value that.
Yeah. I always go back to thinking about guys like Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones, and in this through the same lens, Tyler Boyd, in that these were guys that had to make this decision about staying here, and it was different. They were playing with Andy, but a similar decision where, okay, I'm not going to be the guy here, but I can be a guy and I can stay. Now, do you think if you went back and now again, Burrow changes the dynamics, but if you could go back and say to Marvin Jones or to Mohamed Sanu, hey, would you wish you would have stayed in one place your whole career? They seem like people that were pretty happy with the moves that they made. Mohamed Sanu went to the Super Bowl in Atlanta and was hailed as one of the great free agent signings down there and had a great career. It's like, and there's so much movement anymore. Like it's fine. And I don't know how much value they place in staying in one place, but like Tyler Boyd, I felt like was the opposite side of that. He cherished the security. He liked the idea of playing here. He liked the idea of playing alongside another star in AJ Green at the time when he signed, and he took less. Tyler Boyd could have gone and got more if he wanted to, and he chose to take a little bit of less. He's sort of the other side of the coin. And now, and Tyler was here. Like that's sort of what you sell to Tee Higgins. Tyler was here for the come up. And now I think for whatever it matters to these guys is going to be viewed as much more as like a legendary figure in Bengals history. I think Tyler Boyd is viewed as for what he was on those teams, for being a part of the Super Bowl teams and kind of playing across multiple eras. I wonder, like, I don't know how much that would technically mean to me. But I do think that stuff is, especially when you're someone that's already been with Tee Higgins and then you throw in the elite quarterback situation, that can be pretty compelling in a lot of ways.
It as I was trying to articulate my answer, and I'm not sure I did a great job. I'm thinking like I'm biased here. Like I'm a fan of this team, so I'm maybe not the right person to ask. But to me, it comes down to happiness, right? I mean, it's the central question we all ask ourselves at various points in our life. Am I happy doing this? Would I be happier doing this? What are the risks of leaving a situation that I'm in now and chasing happiness that I might not have? Like, okay, you go to, let's just say it's the Patriots. You go to the Patriots, who might have their quarterback, but man, they got some digging to do. They got some work to do. And it's like, I can go to New England and it might work and I might make a little bit more money, but also, we might have a lower ceiling than we have in Cincinnati, and I might not get to the playoffs for a while, and I might not ever play with the caliber of quarterback that I'm with right now. But I'll be making a lot more money, or at least a little bit more money. Is that worth it? Am I really going to be happier there, making more money than I am here? Like, that's a question for him to answer. I'm not going to hold it against him no matter what he does. Tee Higgins can leave and go anywhere, and I will hold him in the regard as a fan that I have for the last 5 years. But I do think sometimes, like, and it's easy for us to say because we're not confronted with a decision like this, but is the place where you can get the most amount of money the place where you're truly going to be at your happiest, coming to work and playing? And you talk about, like, here he's not going to be the guy, but he is right now. He's the most talked about player in the league, right? I mean, he's the most talked about free agent in the National Football League right now. So he kind of is the guy. And that's a reflection of how well he's played here and what he's meant to this team and what he's meant to its success. What he has here, I think, is special. And is he going to be able to replicate that somewhere else? And if he can, will the increased amount of money he's making elsewhere make up for that? I don't know. But I think if I'm T, I have to ask myself, am I happy here and happy enough to continue playing here, knowing that if I do continue to play here, I am going to forego an opportunity to make even more money. And the thing that makes this a conversation for me, at least, is I think you were there when he was asked about playing under the franchise tag, and his perspective was refreshing. It's like, dude, I'm going to make $22 million playing football this year. Like, I'm good. And so, what fan didn't like hearing that, right? What fan didn't like hearing that? Mm-hmm. And so maybe a similar mindset is in play here, where let's say the number is 25, 20. I don't know. My eyes glaze over when we start talking about what some of these contracts are going to look like, but maybe it's a similar mindset. Like, I'm making blank 26 mil. I'm good. I'm popular here. I love playing with Jamar. I love playing with Joe. We can do something special here. Like, I'm good. Maybe. And maybe he's like, Chad Johnson talked about it last week. I've been working toward this my entire life. I've achieved free agency. I've played 5 years in this league. I've done everything right. I've earned the right to pick and choose based on the offers I get. And I'm going to prioritize the most amount of money. And if he does that, okay. But I would, if I had a chance to sit down in a podcast room with a lamp that doesn't work with Tee Higgins, I'd say, like, are you happy here? And are you going to find happiness elsewhere? And is that happiness going to be solely based on the fact that you can make more money elsewhere?
You know what's really hard, and you see this across all sports, and it always strikes me, is how hard of a time big name free agents have in new towns. Like, this happens consistently, no matter where you are, because if you don't eat immediately with no time given to, like, okay, some time to figure things out, get comfortable, new surroundings, new players, especially in football where the dynamics are so dependent on others. If you don't immediately start making, you become the fall guy. You become the reason things went wrong. Fans get mad at you because you're making money. Hell, you see it when guys stay on the same team and just get a new contract. I mean, the way fans turn on players when they get paid. See Votto, Joey, see Brandon Phillips, see like all of these things. They loved you when you weren't making all this money, but once you start making all the money, the callers into your show are like, he needs to start earning his paycheck, right? And that changes the entire vibe, and players can say, and we can recommend to them to stay off social media and avoid. You can't avoid it. When you live in the city, you're surrounded by it. It matters to you. T strikes me as a person where how people feel about him matters to him. Jamar as well. Like that, and when you have it here, like I don't see people suddenly turning on T. Maybe they would a little because they always do. But not to the way that you would see in another town if you went there and you're depending on Drake May to throw you passes, and it's not going like it did when Joe Burrow threw you passes. And there's a chance that it works out, but I just feel like that dynamic probably gets underrated as players have to go through it to understand the difference. And I'm not saying, that I would take less money at all, but I do think that is something that really can affect your everyday happiness. And that is very much up in the air when you go to a new place. That city doesn't have to love you because you got paid as a free agent at all. And in fact, they're probably more willing to do the opposite the moment you don't go out there and look like, one of the top players in football.
Is the uncertainty worth the extra money? Right. Yeah. I mean, he can certainly pick and choose and pick the right quarterback, the right city, the right division, the right coach, the right organization, the right teammates. But there's more certainty here. I think that's fair. It's more certainty here. And a lot of that certainty is really good. You talked about playing with Joe Burrow. I mean, like, that's pretty damn good. And so, again, whatever he chooses good luck, man. But if I'm him, and this is easy for all of us to say because we don't have those offer sheets in front of us, right? But if I'm him, I'm really happy here, and I can be a part of something special. I can still make awesome money, and I just think there's something really cool about, you know what, if we get it done here, we're going to be celebrated in this city unlike any other. And that to me would be very attractive. And it's one thing to say that if they're coming off back-to-back 4-13 seasons, they're not. Like, I don't think they're that far away. So nothing is guaranteed. You know, he might come back and play for the Bengals and never play in another postseason game, but I don't think they're that far away. You know, Burrow doesn't seem like if Tee Higgins stays here, it feels like we're good in worrying about Joe Burrow trying to leave. So I could play the rest of the decade, the entirety of my next contract with Joe Burrow. Man, that's awfully attractive. That's awfully attractive. And then if it doesn't work, you know, he can still go ring chase later in his career and, you know, maybe not recoup the money that he's out, but boy, the gravitational pull of Cincinnati. Whoever thought we'd be talking about this at various points in franchise history? The gravitational pull home with Burrow and a situation that I know and a fan base that reveres me and the possibilities that come with staying in Cincinnati would be really, really, really hard to resist.
You know, some of the other teams I think that you see involved: Commanders, Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Steelers. These are some of the teams that are wide receiver needy that would have money. Some of them, in the case of Mike Tomlin, have already made open pleas, essentially veiled through pretending they're talking about somebody they're about to play.
But what if, you know, but does that change how people feel? Let's say he ends up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to talk about Tee Higgins playing for the Packers or the Commanders or the Patriots. What if you're playing them twice a year? What you know? Yeah. And all right, that's going to be a little bit different now. What if he doesn't play for the Steelers, but he sticks it to the Bengals a couple of times a year, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I asked the poll question last week, like, if T's on another team and he comes back next year, should you cheer or boo? And like 20% said, well, I gave three choices. Yes, you should boo. Yes, but only if he's with a rival, and rival being, you know, the divisional teams, the Chiefs, you know, I mean, basically those four. And no, and like 20% were like, well, if he's with a rival, it's a little bit different, but that's, you know, I mean, when we talk about like, well, he'll have a chance to walk and hit free agency, understand that includes teams you despise. And so what happens to the relationship? What happens to how we talk about this if instead of going to some team that we don't view as a real competitor to the Bengals, he's suddenly on a team that plays them twice a year, and he's coming back and he's trying to beat them and trying to stick it to them. Obviously he has a chance to play against him no matter who he plays for, but it's a little bit different if it's a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. What if he ends up there, right?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. I mean, what? You know what? We've talked about comps, and this goes back to TJ Houshmandzadeh, right? He ends up playing for Baltimore at one point, and he's talked a little bit about leaving here and having regrets in leaving, but so there's some similarities there between him and Chad, and you know, and I think he's still revered and loved here. And I don't know how much sticking around for the end times there would have changed things. Maybe it would have. He's maybe a good comp to think about when you think about this. I go back to this though. It's like, it's also on the Bengals to help with some of the guarantees here, because that's what it's going to come down to, is like you're hoping to stay for all of these reasons, but how much money, if I rip my leg to shreds or it needs to get amputated tomorrow, whatever, like, what did I lose out on? And that becomes the hard part, is if the guarantees don't get up there, that's inevitably what ends up dooming so many of these situations. If you can't go there, if you can't guarantee something to somebody, it becomes really hard for them to say, oh, okay, but I'll stay because it's going to make me happy. Because what won't make you happy is worrying about that money anymore, which is what I think T wants to be done with.
And if we're going to ask this about T, then don't we also have to ask it about Jamar?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so you and I talked about this on my show. Duke Tobin last week used the word framework about the Jamar Chase deal. And if I'm Jamar Chase, yeah, I know what you can do with that framework, right? You can stick that, but the framework has changed. I won the Triple Crown. Like, okay, and we didn't get it done. I bet on myself. I came up big. So get rid of that framework. And so by every metric I think we could use for 2024, he was the best wide receiver in the sport. Now I want to be the highest paid wide receiver in the sport, and I can't blame him for that. But if we're going to talk about, well, let's keep the band together, who should take less? Well, how important is it to Jamar Chase to continue to play with Tee Higgins? I mean, and if that's not important to Jamar, that's okay. But we keep talking about like, well, they all want to stay together. Okay, well, isn't someone going to have to sacrifice something? Why does that person have to be Tee Higgins? Now, again, I'm not telling Jamar Chase to take less. Again, you have earned the right to but if we're going to harp on like they got to keep the band together, and all right, we understand that someone might have to sacrifice. Does that person have to be Tee Higgins? Can it be a collective sacrifice? Could it be Jamar? Obviously, we talked about what it can mean for Joe, but I think if we're going to do this with T, then we should also do it with the other wide receiver who has a very interesting offseason in front of him.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Super Bowl thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on, through a Bengals lens, things you are watching or interested in or rooting for as a Bengals fan in the Super Bowl?
As a Bengals fan, no. But remember when the schedule came out and we started to talk about like getting off to a fast start, relatively easy early schedule. Here are some of the landmines. We never talked about the Philadelphia Eagles game.
Yeah.
And, if you want to look at a point where we started to go, okay, maybe they're not going to get out of this. It was that Philly game, right? I mean, but it was also like the Eagles came in, they hadn't scored in the first quarter all season long, kept getting off to these slow starts. The coach was yelling at fans. And I remember like as the second half of that game unfolded going like, okay, these two rosters aren't the same.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm doing with this game. I think Philadelphia is going to win, and I don't want to say it's going to be a blowout, but I kind of am not going to be surprised if it ends up being a convincing Philadelphia victory.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they need it to be because Kansas City is banking on getting into another one of these close games,
right?
And that they always seem to find ways to win and finding a way to do just that. If you're Philly, that's just it. You need it to be like the last time you dethroned a legend, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you took out Tom Brady and really kind of started running away with it a little bit. I mean, the game was close, but like they held firm control in the most important moments, and it wasn't. You can't be doing what the Bengals have done too often and punting to Patrick Mahomes late in the fourth quarter with the game tied. Like you can't do that. You've got to be able to have it already put away because he will find a way to win. And so that's they have to take advantage of that. They have to be the team that plays from far ahead and maybe finds a way to let Saquon Barkley be the one and that defense be the one to kind of put them away and not leave it where, okay, it's close all the way to the end. Easier said than done against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But, I mean, I think that is kind of the method.
And then you can look at it from a Bengals perspective and you can look at it from just a fan of the sport. If Mahomes wins a fourth, right, like we've kind of lumped in all these, contemporary quarterbacks in the same conversation, Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Herbert, Hurts, a handful of guys. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, if he wins his fourth, that's what everybody's chasing, right? I mean, which is ridiculous, ridiculous. But then I think you start to talk about, and nobody listening to this probably wants to hear this. If he wins his fourth now, like I thought when Tom Brady won his 7th and his 10th Super Bowl that those records were unbreakable. If he wins his fourth, could he get to 7?
Yeah.
I mean,
at this point, he's doing all the same things Brady did
Right.
He still has so much of his career in front of him. I mean, it's there's no reason to believe that he can't make it.
And the fact that they could three-peat and win the title again this year during a season when they rarely looked like anything close to the best team in the league, and would have done it really losing one game. There was the Week 18 game they threw. Look, Bengals fans don't want to hear this, but you tip your cap. But
yeah,
I've thought all season long, like their flaws are going to catch up to them at precisely the wrong point. Did not happen against the Texans. It did not happen against Buffalo. So I'm banking on it happening against Philadelphia.
I've said it for 2 years. I mean, last year was the same way.
Yeah.
They where you said, well, their flaws are going to, this is the year they don't have a very good team. And then they found a way to do it last year. It's just, it's remarkable. Do you have New Orleans? All these people are like experiencing New Orleans. Some people for the first time that cover the NFL, it's kind of fun to watch. It's like for those of us that have done it many times and experienced it as one of the great American cities. Do you have a favorite New Orleans story?
Am I falling into a trap here?
No.
Are you okay?
No.
I stayed. Well, so the very first time I went to New Orleans was the 2002 New Orleans Bowl. UC played North Texas. Gino Guidugli.
People are still talking about that game.
Yeah, one of the iconic bowl games. North Texas beat UC 24-19. Gino Guidugli, unfortunately, threw 5 interceptions. It wasn't good. There was a fight on Bourbon Street between North Texas players and UC players. We spent the night. I had never been to New Orleans. I had never had a hurricane. And so I had one, and I was told in terms that I will not use on this podcast, don't have more than 2.
Yes.
I had more than 2, and I missed the plane the next day. So there was that. The Sugar Bowl, when UC was undefeated, we were there for 8 days. 8 days in New Orleans will age you, man.
That's too many. That's too much.
Oh my God. I was married to my first wife, and she came down like midway through. And I remember like we went to the airport to pick her up and her friend, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I've done this city for 3 days. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, you know what I remember from that Sugar Bowl? I was actually there too. That was like when I first moved back to Cincinnati, and I was like covering the Sugar Bowl for C-Natty at the time. Shout out C-Natty and C-Trent. But I remember it wasn't my first time on Bourbon Street at all, but it was the most memorable because it was packed around New Year's, right? I'd never really been there around that time. And I just remember how it was shoulder to shoulder everywhere. And then a beer truck tried to make a delivery down Bourbon Street at like 10 o'clock at night. I've never seen this giant truck just trying to squeeze its way down past people. Now, obviously, in light of recent events, it's like, this cannot happen. You know what I mean? You're thinking, watching it, like, how is this even possible that a beer truck? But then all of a sudden the crowd got behind it. Like, let's get this beer delivered, and like everybody started parting. Families were jumping on top of the back of the beer truck, jumping up and down in excitement upon its delivery. I mean, it was actually kind of a fun communal experience to see. And I'll never forget that, thinking like, man, this is just a different place. They just live by different standards here.
It's my favorite American city. And I've gone a bunch for basketball and football games, and then I've gone on vacations. It's I'll tell you, man, people ask me like, what's the coolest thing you ever did in your career? Hurricane Katrina sucked beyond anybody's imagination, but the company Clear Channel sent a bunch of us to help staff radio stations, because you had people who were covering this incredible global story while they were losing their homes, and so they're like, look, we need to send a crew to just go staff radio stations, and it was extraordinarily rewarding. It was the most amount of work I've ever done in a tiny amount of time. And we were basically there to do whatever. If it was run a control board, if it was go out in the field and produce, if it was go get these folks something to eat, whatever it was. And they crammed us in this embassy suites, all of us, from, folks who were living in New Orleans, folks who were sent from other parts of the country to go to help these radio stations out. And, I mean, I was working an overnight shift. I mean, it was unbelievable. So we were crammed into these 2 Embassy Suites hotel rooms, and you just found space to sleep. I mean, like I slept one night underneath a fold-out bed. But anyway, one morning I had worked all night. I get back to the hotel, and I'm watching television. I'm watching Hurricane Katrina coverage, and this door opens up, and like you're seeing people that you've never seen before. You're really like bunking up with strangers, and it's this guy who clearly has like food, and he's got a backpack, and he's struggling to get the door. So I spring into action, and I say, "Do you need a hand?" And the second half of his body springs out, and on his hand is a hook, a prosthetic hook. And he says, "As a matter of fact, yes."
What? He had a hook?
He had a hook.
What are the odds?
Gentleman
what
had
are the odds?
He literally, and I'm not making fun of this because
and then he attacked you with it, or
no,
was he cool with it?
He was, but I just like stood there, like, what do you say? Like he's like, I'm like, of all the fucking things I could have said to this guy, and I mean, God knows what happened to his hand. He didn't ask. I mean, sure, he gets that question a dozen times a day. I didn't ask. Yeah. But
wow.
I don't know why. That's not a great New Orleans story. But whenever I think of New Orleans, I think of going down there to post Katrina. And then when I think of post Katrina, I think of this guy and his like, I mean, he was trying to get like a bunch of stuff. He had one hand to work with. And I go, "Do you need it?" And hook. And oh my God. So, that's there's my New Orleans story.
There's a New Orleans story. No, that's good. No trap at all. No trap at all.
I got one more. I got one more. Real quick.
Oh,
real quick.
Go for it. Keep going.
So the 2000 the Sugar Bowl year, the first night we're there is a Saturday, and I proceed like I go in like a lion, right? Just I have a great time in New Orleans. Our friend Tom Galater ushers me back to my hotel room and says like, "All right, well, you got to get up and go to practice in the morning." I oversleep practice. And so the Bengals are playing the Chiefs. Bengals would win this game 17-10 to clinch the AFC North. Chad Johnson with a key touchdown grab in the fourth quarter, I believe. All I wanted to do was find a place that would show the game. And so I venture out, and I'm like, I got to find a place that'll show the game. I see a place that has the little like decal on the window, NFL Sunday Ticket. And I walk in, and they have 2 TVs. And one game is showing the New Orleans Saints game. The other one is showing Browns versus Raiders. And I walk in and I say, "Hey, I don't know if anybody's watching that. Any chance you could put on Bengals Chiefs?" And the woman starts like, flipping, and you go to a bar and you can tell the person like doesn't really know it. And so I'm like, "Oh, this isn't going to end well." And after like 3 minutes of scrolling, she ends back up on the Browns Raiders game. And I say like, "No, I wanted Cincinnati Bengals versus Kansas City Chiefs." And she looks up at the TV, looks at me and goes, "Close enough." So
that was that.
And then a guy with a hook walked in too. And it was unbelievable.
Oh, that's great. No, I remember that man, talk about crazy trips, the 2009 Sugar Bowl. I remember also that night there was a concert going on in Jackson Square, which is off of Bourbon Street. And I was like, "Oh, I want to go check it out. I want to see what's going on in there." And I kept hearing this person yelling into the microphone, new Cupid on Facebook and Twitter." And I was like, "New Cupid." And he starts, and I'm like, "Oh, it was the guy from the Cupid Shuffle was there." Okay. But and everybody's just chanting like Cupid Shuffle, but he kept wanting to sing his other songs. Right. And it's like, man, can we just you have like thousands of people gathered here ready to do the Cupid Shuffle. You're Cupid. We don't want to hear about Facebook and Twitter and your other songs. Please just play the Cupid Shuffle, do the Cupid Shuffle, and just do it on repeat. Right. Everybody feels the same way. And then he breaks out one of the great bangers I've ever heard live in my entire career. It was called "Please Don't Make Your Baby Mama Mad, Y'all." It truly was a great song. And I was just like, man, I am loving this song. And I went to go look up the next day, like, where can I find this on the internet? I mean, we weren't exactly in 1995 on the internet. I felt like I'd be able to find it somewhere. And the only way I could find it was on YouTube in a Mick concert at an opening of a McDonald's. You could see like in front of the playground equipment and stuff, and there he is singing "Please Don't Make Your Baby Mama Mad," y'all. It's a great song. I highly recommend it if everybody gets a chance to. It would never replicate hearing it live on New Year's Eve at Jackson Square, but great song if you get a chance to check it out.
If you ever have a chance to talk to any of the former Bearcat players who were on that team, obviously Brian Kelly was no longer the coach, had already moved on to Notre Dame. And so you had a staff where most of the assistants were off to Notre Dame and were there in New Orleans, but they were working for Notre Dame. So their mind was not on what was happening in New Orleans. And then you had the interim coach, Jeff Quinn, was set to be the head coach at Buffalo, and he had some staffers going with him. And then they had a couple of staffers that had, no job. They needed to find a job. And so nobody was focused on the game. The way they played would be reflective as much. Nobody was focused on the game. Nobody was policing the players. And so I remember vividly walking down Bourbon Street, and there's Jason Kelce on top of a police horse. And I remember there's Marty Gilliard. I think he's old enough to be in that place. It was chaos. It was, and the only thing, I went to 2 of those practices. The only thing anybody cared about was no one tip off the public to the white helmets. Yeah. And I remember you have white helmets. Who cares? Announce it now. The effort you're putting into hiding the white helmets is not worth it. Okay.
No.
So what? And I remember, I think it was Bill Cook, the former beat writer for the Inquirer, I think took a picture or something. And somebody comes yeah, you can't delete that. And it was what we should do is figure out how you're going to stop Aaron Hernandez and Carlos Dunlap. Instead of the white helmets, let's stop those guys instead. And we know, but it was, forget what I was doing, just hearing the stories, and many of them after the fact, from the players who just had 8 days to run around New Orleans. That was a trip to behold, man.
8 days. 8 days.
8 days.
Oh, 8 days in New Orleans feels like one hell of a 30 for 30 that I would be interested in watching. Even if it's just Jason Kelce telling the stories for an hour, I think I'm interested in taking that in. Mo, appreciate it. Thanks for your time and finding a podcast studio in random parts of the city. Add it to the list. Add this to the list of places you have done this podcast from. It's growing. It's growing. We might have to rank our favorites soon.
Nothing will top the parking lot in Forest Park, but I'd like to thank the folks in this building for their hospitality.
Yeah, maybe I will join you next time after our next golf lesson. All right.
We'll do it. Yes, done.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
See ya.